Good morning and welcome. This is Brent Janelle with the Retired Living Truth series and my partner and wife, Annette Janelle. And today's one of our bonus sessions where we're interviewing Chaplain Robert Orr with Kindred Hospice. And today's topic is what you should know about hospice and bereavement. Welcome, Chaplain Orr. How are you today?
I'm doing wonderful. It is my honor to be here, and I am double checking here to make sure I hit the video and the mute so you can hear me okay.
We hear you perfectly. And I just want to check in with our attendees. I see we have a lot of people on. Could everybody just raise their hand if you can see us and the slide that's currently up on the screen? Can you see the slide? Yeah, lots of hands going up. Okay, great. Thank you so much for interacting with us. It's great to have so many people joining us today. So let's jump right in. Chaplain Orr, could you just share who you are, the services you provide, and a little bit about what you do day to day?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, it's my honor to be here, and I appreciate you guys doing this. And welcome to everybody that's out there. Again, I am with Kindred Hospice here in Carson City. I am the chaplain and bereavement coordinator, and I also have a master's degree in grief counseling and family counseling, and am a certified grief recovery specialist as well. And hospice is a great organization. A lot of people don't understand what hospice is, and we'll be talking about that obviously today, what we provide. But hospice is basically not curative care, but palliative care. So we'll be talking about that.
That's fantastic. And actually I'd like to delve right into hospice and what it is, because there are a lot of misconceptions. People believe, a certain thing about a hospice. So what is it that we should know?
Well, first of all, when a family first hears about hospice, a lot of times it's because of a life-threatening illness or a life-terminating illness. And it's always a difficult time, and it's a struggle. And it's important to know that people have options, and hospice is one of those options that patients and family have. And as I shared a little bit, that hospice is palliative care, which means not curative care. So like when you go to a hospital to get something, you have a problem, something there, you're there to be cured for something. And hospice is palliative care, which is it's comfort care, helping the patient and the family receive comfort, maybe pain medications, things like that help so that the patient is not in pain and is basically brought home from the hospital and maybe to their own home where they can be loved and cared for and in a surrounding that is special to them rather than a cold stainless steel hospital room. And so that's what hospice does. Plus also hospice provides a medical doctor. We provide expert nurses, social worker, chaplain, bereavement coordinators, and hospice aides and trained volunteers that help with the family. And a lot of times people don't know those services are provided with hospice. They think, oh, it's just a nurse and a doctor and that's all. And there's a lot of things that hospice provides, but the most important thing is it's comfort care for the families. And that's probably the most important thing that I share with people, because there is a lot of misconceptions out there.
So Chaplain Orr, you just listed off a whole list of people who are involved. Can you just say those one more time and just what each briefly does as part of the team?
Absolutely. Basically, we have a medical doctor who is our hospice medical director as well. And that is Dr. Schwartz here in Carson City at Kindred Hospice. And we also have about 6 hospice trained nurses that deal with the pain medications and helping with the patient's needs and the family's needs as well. We also have 2 social workers. The social workers help with some of the legal aspects, funeral arrangements, maybe VA situations that help the veterans get the support that they need. and the help that they deserve, number one. I'm also part of the We Honor Veterans program, and so we spend a lot of time helping our veterans get the hospice care that they need. We also have 2 chaplains, and then I'm also the bereavement coordinator. The chaplains help with the spiritual care, obviously, and maybe help also with funeral arrangements, and maybe if families are of different beliefs or different faiths, it's the chaplain's responsibility to contact the Catholic priest or the Mormon bishop. And so we work kind of in a framework of all different religions, and even the people that are just spiritual, just want spiritual help.
So out of curiosity, you listed off quite a few different people that are at hospice, but if I am an individual, do I get just one from each group, like one social worker, one chaplain, or do all of those people that you listed off interact with me at one time or another?
Exactly. Well, when a person does come on hospice, they have access to the team, and the team, the doctor, nurses. Typically, each patient is assigned one nurse and one chaplain and one social worker, even though we may have more, but each patient or family is assigned at least one. Sometimes if they're on vacation, another one will step in. But and then the other 2 areas are the hospice aides and the CNAs, the certified nurses assistants is what that is. And then also we have trained volunteers from the community that go in and help, maybe give respite for the families that are helping the patient, letting them take some time off, maybe go to the post office or meet some friends, or maybe take a nap. Sometimes that's important to be able to do that. So, but that is a team. But pretty much each family or patient is assigned one of the team members, but they have the whole team: doctor, nurse, chaplain, social worker, volunteer, CNAs available to them. And most times the nurse visits maybe once or twice a week, the CNAs 2 or 3 times a week, chaplain once a week, maybe every other week, depending on their needs.
So you've got some consistency there. That's good.
Yeah, so you mentioned like every week or every other week. I think there's a misconception. Maybe you could just clarify that you reach out to hospice when you know that the individual has days to live. Can you just comment on that?
Exactly. Yeah, I know that for hospice, Kindred Hospice is a national leader with over 500,000 patients nationwide. And there is a lot of misconceptions about what hospice is. And one of the biggest things, the misconceptions, is that, hospice is just about death and that's all, and we're always just sad and dealing with death all the time. And that's a big misconception, because I spend most of my time dealing with alive people, dealing with the patient who's alive, dealing with the family who's alive. And it's also a misconception that everything is doom and gloom, and that's not true also. I believe that there's a lot of humor. I shared with Brett the other day that I had a patient a few months back who was given a 6-month terminal illness, and he has been on hospice for over a year. And I went to visit him, and he was all depressed and down, and I go, "What's the matter?" He goes, "Well, I told all my friends I was going to be gone in 6 months, and I'm still here." So sometimes there's humor in hospice, and there's just a lot of misconceptions that they come on hospice when they're on their last breath, and that's not true as well, because we provide so much more. The pain medications, the help in comfort care that can be given the moment that they're given the terminal illness, and maybe it's 6 months. If they wait to the last day of the 6th month to come on hospice, they've missed out on 6 months of care and love and support, rather than being stuck in a hospital room And it's just really tough right now dealing with that.
Now, previously you had mentioned to us that a hospice is an opportunity and a gift to both the individual and the family. Is that what you're referring to? Is all the support that's there available?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's a gift in that a lot of times when there, and as a pastor, I've dealt with this for many years, when there's a tragic death, a car accident, or a heart attack, and they pass away, families don't get a chance to say goodbye. I hear that a lot. That I wish I could have said goodbye to Dad one more time. I wish I could have told Mom I loved you one more time. And the gift that I see about hospice is they have that opportunity. They know they only have a limited amount of time. Of course, we all know that anyway, but with hospice, they're given the opportunity to put closure, to say the I loves you, to say goodbye, to maybe give some forgiveness, or I forgive you, or will you forgive me? And I spend a lot of time in my counseling practice helping families and couples, maybe even bringing estranged family members who haven't seen the patient for years sometimes. And I call them and say, hey, you know, your brother's dying, and you really need to say something to him, put some closure, so you don't go the rest of your life wishing you would have done that. And so that's the gift of hospice that I see. And then, of course, obviously, the most important part is the comfort care, bringing the patient home, bringing them to a place where they're familiar, where they're loved, where their medications are being taken care of by a nurse who knows the disease process and can be a better help. We've actually seen some patients who are in the hospital really bad come on hospice and actually get better. Now, not necessarily be cured, but their quality of life becomes better. Their medications are regulated and they become better in their pain and their emotions and their feelings and their spirit and their heart, and they're around loved ones, which that whole process is what hospice is about, which makes it so special and important to get the information out there that people know that this is available to them. And that's the gift that I see that hospice provides.
It sounds like you can extend the life of people too. I mean, like you said, the gentleman that was expected 6 months and it's been a year, and you just talked about just having that support around can make life better during that time.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's important to know that, probably for me, this is one of the most important things, is that patients and families know that they're not alone in this, that there's people to be a help and support to them. And they don't have to go through the dying process either for the patient alone, or the family doesn't have to go through the whole grief. And there's one thing about grief I want to share, that there's pre-bereavement and bereavement. And I work with families a lot in what's called anticipatory grief. And that's preparing and planning. When a patient or a family hears that they have a terminal illness, they can begin grieving right then and there. Family, the patients, and so grief begins. And it's not till they die that grief starts. It can begin before. And so I do a lot of counseling and help and support with the family and help them to anticipate what to expect, what to see, and what to expect in their own hearts and feelings, and do counseling with them to help them through that. Because grief is hard. It is difficult. I've been doing this for 35 years as a pastor and counselor, and with hospice for about 20 years. And I believe that helping them know that they're not alone is probably one of the most powerful things that can be a help for the families.
So how long does your support, once the loved one passes away, the bereavement, those support services for the family members, how long are those available to them?
Exactly. We make a commitment, and when the patient comes on hospice, this is told by the admissions nurse to the family and the patient, that we make a commitment to the family for 1 year after the patient passes. I have files of patients that have passed a year ago. Some I'm still doing counseling with, or I send letters to. We send letters every 3, 6, 9, 12 months to the families. I call the families sometimes once a month just to check on them. Sometimes I do physical counseling. Sometimes they come into the office. But we provide that counseling and bereavement support for a year afterwards. I also have although with the COVID thing, it's been a little tough, but I've been doing a bereavement group that's open to the community, open to anybody who wants to come, not just our hospice families, but open to the community. And I've been averaging anywhere from 15 to 20 people every other Thursday here at the Kindred office from 10 to 11:30. And I provide bereavement support and help, materials, ideas, thoughts. Sometimes I'll have guest speakers come in and share different aspects. Sometimes I'll have different team members come in and speak to the bereavement group about, like the social worker helping the bereaved with ongoing needs, like the VA and things like that. But
So this group that you have, and it's open to anybody, does it matter how long ago the loved one passed away?
No. Grief has no time limit. I believe that, and I've had people in my bereavement group who had a loved one pass away 5, 6, 7 years ago. And sometimes people get into a situation where they're not able to grieve for time. And then eventually it comes to the point where they either allow themselves the freedom to grieve, or a situation comes up that exasperates the grief and it brings it all back. And the grief just doesn't go away. People think, oh, time heals everything. And I don't believe that. That's like telling somebody who has a flat tire, we'll just sit on the side of the road and then in time the tire will fix itself. It doesn't work. You have to take action. And that's what I do. That's my part as a chaplain and a bereavement coordinator, is to help people move forward with their grief, to help them take action, to do something to help them find what they need to do inside themselves to move forward, not to stay stuck. And I share that with my bereavement group and counseling a lot, that staying stuck is what prolongs the pain of grief. Grief doesn't go away. Can I read something that I think is really powerful because it hits right on this very issue?
Yep, please do.
I share this a lot, that this is a beautiful quote that says that grief is the last act of love we give our loved ones. Where there is deep grief, there is great love. Grief is the great rite of passage. Grief is a hero's journey, a courageous battle of sorrow, of love, of joy and loss. Through the darkness of grief, we can see the light of love, which transcends death. And with the pain can come gratitude for the gift of time we had, the love shared, and the power to become a better person because they loved us. And that's what I believe. I believe grief is love. And if people can understand that and see that and hold on to that love, because sometimes I have people ask me all the time, well, when am I going to be done with grief? And I say, you want to be done with the love you have for your loved one? Oh, no, I don't want that, Well, that's what you're saying in a sense. I can help you with the deep pain of the grief and help you move forward with taking actions to deal with that as a certified grief recovery specialist. But grief is going to be with you for the rest of your life, just like the memory of your loved one is going to be with you for the rest of your life. And that's very important to know and to be a help.
So this bereavement service sounds like it'd be really expensive. Can you touch on that?
Well, first of all, when anybody comes on on hospice, usually Medicaid, Medi-Cal, or if they're California, Medicare helps to pay for that. Sometimes patients do have to pay for some of their own medication, but a lot of the comfort care meds are paid for through insurance or the Medicare provider. For bereavement, though, there's no cost for bereavement. That's all included, even for the year afterwards. That's provided under when they came on hospice. Even for the community, I do counseling. I have an office out in front where people can come for counseling, open to the community. There's no charge. The bereavement group is free of charge to the community. So there's no charge for that. We provide that as a hospice service for the community. It's a kind of a catch-22 though, because the more we're out there in the community, the more people know about hospice, the more people learn about hospice. And then of course, when they have a loved one who needs hospice, guess what? They think of us. And so, it's kind of like a little advertising.
Well, that's obviously part of why we're doing today, because we want more people calling and using the service. And I think people would be crazy if they didn't, if they had a need, rather than trying to get through the period on their own.
Exactly. And that's what I love. And I speak and share and talk to Kiwanis and veterans groups and church organizations to help them understand just exactly what you're doing, to help people understand what hospice is. And there's a lot more to hospice than just the death and the end of life. There's so much pre of the death that can be of help and support, not only to the patient, but to the family before and after. And even in my bereavement group, I get people say all the time that, wow, I didn't know hospice did all of that. There you go. And that's where the importance of helping people understand and know what hospice is and what hospice does can be such a benefit to the patient and the family.
Most definitely. So, Chaplin, just to interrupt for one moment, we have someone who's typed in a question that was relevant to something you said before, and just for everyone else listening, if you have questions, you are welcome to click on the Q&A button that'll be somewhere on your screen and type in your question. And once we get a little bit further along, we'll also open it up for questions for anyone. But if you have questions, feel free to start typing those in. But the question that was asked is, with a person who's expected to go within 6 months, pass away within the next 6 months, if they get improve their situation like you talked about and live maybe for a year or more, how does that work with hospice? Do they stay on hospice? Does hospice suddenly get cut off because they've exceeded their 6 months? Can you just tell us a little bit about how that works?
You got it. All the hospice patients have a 3-month recert period. So every 3 months we have to, the doctor, the nurses, the team has to reassess, do they still qualify for hospice? And there's a lot of times that patients no longer qualify for hospice. They're either getting better or something is happening. Even though they've been given a terminal illness, they may still have the terminal illness, but their quality of life is improved so that they don't really necessarily need the hospice team and everybody dealing with them. And they maybe go off hospice for 6, 8, 9 months, a year. A lot of times they will come back, but every 3 months we recert. We've had patients be on hospice for a year plus. And we have had patients come on hospice, and after 3 to 6 months, after each 3-month recert, go off hospice. And I've got a file of patients that have gone off hospice and still have not come back onto hospice.
So it's a good thing to be fired from hospice.
Exactly, yeah. And so there's not, you don't just have 6 months and that's it, you're done, then that's it, And, we will recert every 3 months, and the team will reassess and look at the vitals and everything that's going on. And we have the whole list of everything, and they check all the different aspects, the medications, you know, the blood pressures and all the different signs, vital signs of the patient, just to see what their quality of life is. Are they able to get up and feed themselves, or are they not now? Are they able to get out and ambulate or walk on their own, or do they need help now? Are they just laying in bed all the time, or were they, and has that changed? And so we have to look at all those different aspects, and those things determine whether they still qualify. And there's a lot of qualifications that a patient has to deal um, with, you know, coming on the hospice. One of the things that's important to know is that the to qualify for hospice, basically a person, you know, obviously has to have a life limiting illness such as cancer, heart disease, stroke, end stage Alzheimer's disease, or, you know, any other life threatening condition that at least is a life expectancy of 6 months. And the doctor determines that, and then the doctor talks to them about the possibility of coming on hospice. Every patient and family has to agree to come on hospice. Nobody can be forced to go into hospice. They have to sign, you know, whether they want to come on hospice. And the doctor has to agree that hospice is appropriate for their specific situation and disease process.
So basically, no other treatments can be done at that point, or it's been decided that this is the end, and or that there isn't anything else that's going to make my life better. There is no miracle drug at this point that's going to help me. Now, I have heard of people that have been on hospice, and then there is some kind of new treatment that comes out, and then they choose to be taken off of hospice so they can participate in that new treatment. Is that correct?
Exactly. That is very correct. And that's a great question, because that is so true. And that does happen, not a lot, but it does happen, where some new treatment comes available, or the family or a patient says, you know, boy, they look like they're getting better. Maybe we can try this or try that, where before their quality of life and the pain and struggles they were going through didn't allow them to undergo that treatment. But because of the pain medication that was regulated and helped them be more in a loving, caring, supportive, comfort environment, then all of a sudden, wow, their life improves a little bit, and they qualify now to have that possible treatment. And it does happen, and sometimes that treatment works, and sometimes it doesn't. But sometimes we'll have patients that are on that. The patient and the family will say, we want to try something, and we'll go, okay, great. They do have to come off hospice. And so they no longer get the doctor, the nurses, they no longer get the team, but they're at least able to pursue that curative care to help cure the problem. And sometimes it does help, and it does work, but it doesn't always.
So the medication that a person is on while they're on hospice is just purely pain management. Is that correct?
No, it's not just purely pain medicine. That is probably the number one. You know, the morphine and the different types of, you know, Ativan and things like that are the most prescribed medication for comfort care. But, you know, they may have COPD, they may have breathing situations that those things help them with their comfort care. So there's different types of medications. Maybe they have, you know, I mean, there's all kinds of things. I could go on and on with all the different issues that a patient may have. We try to help them so that they're being comforted in whatever issue they have. Now, some of those comfort medications, they may have to provide themselves. The family may have to provide that. We don't provide that for them. But the main comfort medications designed to that illness, directly related to that illness, we will provide that for them. Sometimes if they want to take, eye drops or, digestive, issues and stuff that, sometimes if it's related to the disease process, we will provide that. If not, then they have to provide it.
Thank you for explaining that. I just wanted to jump back, Chaplin, or to something you and I spoke about, I think it was last week, and you kind of touched on earlier regarding pre-bereavement. You'd mentioned social workers and why pre-bereavement can be so important in terms of things with like legal and preparation for, passing. Can you just touch on some of those things that really help, a family, individuals during that time?
Exactly. A lot of times, like myself, Chaplin, and the bereavement coordinator and the social worker, we will help the patient and the family maybe deal with some of the legal issues that they're dealing with, helping prepare their memorial service, their family funeral services, preparing and planning for those things. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes patients don't even want to talk about it, let alone the family, and I have to sometimes come in and say, we have to talk about this. This is important. And the reason why it's important is, you want to get some of the legal things taken care of before the death, number one. Number two, you want to get a lot of the things that are going to take time and energy and effort away from grieving before, because if you don't, when the patient does pass, guess what? You got to start dealing with all of that stuff on top of grieving. And if we can help people get the funeral arrangements and the VA situated and the legal issues taken care of, and the primary caregivers and the power of attorneys and all those things taken care of before, then when the patient does pass, the family is able to grieve more appropriately rather than be stuck in having to deal with all the legal and financial and struggles of making decisions where those decisions are made before. They don't have to deal with that on top of the grief.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And then, of course, the spiritual aspect too, preparing them for the spiritual issues that they may be dealing with and going through, where do they go when they die? And, there's all kinds of issues that can be dealt with before spiritually, and the pre-bereavement, like I said, anticipatory grief, and helping them prepare before the patient passes, helping them so when the patient does pass, they're more prepared, they're more able to deal with it in that time.
Yeah, well, I'd had a total misconception about your role because when your colleague Kimberly had introduced me to you and said it was Chaplin, I thought, okay, we're going to be talking about last rites, but couldn't be anything further from the truth.
Well, I actually did that on Tuesday, literally after we had talked. I went to visit a patient and family, and even though I'm not Catholic, the Catholic priest wasn't able to make it, so they asked me if I would be there and kind of do my, Protestant last rites, with them, and I was able to share a blessing and pray with the family and be with them during that time. And interestingly enough, the patient passed away that night, Tuesday night. So I get that a lot. Unfortunately, as a chaplain, sometimes, and I'll touch on this, we have a number of patients in skilled nursing facilities. And so I go visit the patients in skilled nursing facilities because their family members are on the East Coast, or they're in Washington or LA, and so they're not close by. And there's many times when the nurse will say the patient is, we call code red, where they're actively dying. And I will quick get over there and I'll be the one holding their hand when they breathe their last breath. And a lot of times people will say to me, oh my gosh, that's so hard, that's so difficult. And I look at them, I go, no, that's an honor. A life that has lived 70, 80, 90 years on this planet, and I get to be the person to hold their hand when they pray their last breath. That's an honor to me. And to be there to share, to talk with them and to say, you are loved, you are cared for, you're important. I'm glad you were born. I'm glad you lived on this. And to hear and to see the tears, you know, and to be there. So that's an honor to me. That's part of why I do what I do, to be there, to be a help and support, and with the families as well. And my role, not only as a bereavement coordinator, but a chaplain, helps, you know, to be a support for those who need spiritual support, who are struggling. I've had patients who are, you know, they're mad at God. You know, they're mad, the family's mad at God. Why is God taking my dad away? You know, and to help them and to answer their questions and maybe even say, you know, we might not have an answer right now, but at least we can work on it together and see what we can do together. One thing about, and you probably, I may be going ahead of you here on the questions, but this whole the COVID thing with working with skilled nursing facility has been difficult.
How's that been a challenge? How's that changed things?
Well, first of all, especially with the skilled nursing facility, a lot of the families haven't been able to go into the skilled nursing facility to see the patient, to see their loved one. And we've had a number of patients, even just this week, we've had probably 3 patients this week pass away, but the family was not able to go see them. And for the last
It's not that the patients had
3 months,
COVID, they had something else, but because of the COVID pandemic, family weren't able to get in. Is that correct?
correct. Yeah, and we've had no patients with the COVID virus. And all the patients and the families that we've had nobody with the virus. We've had no patients or family members with the virus. But because of the COVID-19 pandemic, the skilled nursing facilities has had to shut down people coming in because they don't want the spread of the virus, obviously. And so family members haven't been able to come in. Sure, they're able to call and talk on the phone and even do this, you know, with their Zoom and FaceTime and things like that with their family members. But to physically be there with them, they haven't been able to do that. And that's caused a lot more grief and a lot more hurt and pain on the part of both the patient and the family members. And it's tough. And I'm doing a lot of counseling, and people, especially with the family members that have passed, the grief that they have that they weren't able to see them is tough. And you know, there's not a lot we can do about it. I haven't been able to even see a lot of patients. Sometimes in the home, we're able to go in and see them and be with them. The chaplain, social worker, obviously the nurses are all able to go to the skilled nursing facility and see them and work with their medications and stuff. But the social worker, chaplain, bereavement coordinator, the volunteers, no, we're not able to go in. I have one patient just down the street at Skyline who her room has a big pane window, and so I go over and I wave to her in the window through the window, and you know, and talk to her on the phone, you know, and you know, at least she feels like she's getting some contact, you know, she's not just stuck by herself and not able to see. And some of the family members were able to do that with some of the patients that have windows close by. You've probably seen that on Facebook and social media, you know, people meeting and with windows and stuff in front of them.
Doing the best we can during this time.
Exactly. And it's just an added stress to the family and the patients, you know, and to our hospice team. It's just all stressful for everybody, and it's unfortunate, and it's frustrating too for a lot of people. And it's frustrating to the nurses, it's frustrating to the patient, and it's tough. But I know that this whole COVID thing, in time, we'll get back to, I don't know what normal will be, but we'll get back to some semblance of being able to do that. And even with my bereavement group, we're looking, anticipating starting that up again in time.
Yeah, I was actually touched when you were telling me about the importance of that pre-bereavement period. It's when the stories and connections and things that haven't been shared between family members come out, and just the gratitude of everybody involved.
Yeah. And a lot of times even in the pre-bereavement, and obviously this has to be appropriate, but like I said in the early part, that I believe humor is one of the best ways to sometimes break the ice, sometimes help them realize that, life does go on. We don't have to stay stuck. And a lot of times when I share humor, I always have to make sure it's appropriate and at the right timing. And that's kind of part of being a professional. You have to be sometimes. But I shared the story of a law firm that was moving from their old location into a new building, and the local florist brought flowers to the law firm saying, sorry for your loss. And across town was a funeral service at the cemetery, and the florist delivered flowers that said, congratulations on your new location, And sometimes you go, oh, okay, well, that's appropriate, And I've actually shared that story in memorial services, and then people laugh, and then I'll go on to say, yeah, congratulations on your new location. And that's kind of appropriate if you think about it, congratulations. But, humor, there is humor, believe it or not, in grief and pain and hurt. And sometimes it's hard for people to see that. But when they do see it, they're like, yeah. And it can be refreshing. It can be like a breath of fresh air, knowing that I can laugh. My life can go on. And that's part of the bereavement, the pre and the post bereavement, helping them realize that they don't have to stay stuck in their grief and their pain and their hurt. They can move forward. And that's kind of my job, to help them work through that, to give them tools to help them move forward.
Chaplain, or if it's okay with you, if you didn't have any other questions, would you be okay to take some questions from our attendees?
Absolutely.
So if anyone has questions for Chaplain Orr, feel free to type them in the Q&A box, or better yet, love to see you raise your hand and we'll unmute you and you can direct your question. And someone has asked here, describe the hospice team. I'm guessing maybe they got on the call a little late, so we did go over who the team members are, if I'm understanding the question correctly, of who's on the team. So we will send out a recording of this, and Chaplain Orr covered who the various team members and their roles and so forth are. And then Pat, are you there, Pat? Would you like to share what you just shared on the screen with us? If you're willing to, just raise your hand. You should have a little button there to raise hand, if you're so willing to. So Pat, you should be able to speak now. We should be able to hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can,
Yes.
Pat. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. And as I mentioned in my question, or commented in my question and answer, sadly, our mother, 97-year-old mother, just passed away this last week. And it is, I cannot tell you how amazing hospice care is and how much emotional and medical support they provided to us during this passing. She fell about 6 weeks ago and was taken to the hospital, Renown, and then to rehab at Woodland. And the saddest part for her was that she was inconsolable because she did not understand about the COVID quarantine. and why we could not be with her, even though we even had a window meeting, but that ended up in just terrible emotional crying from her. And it wasn't until we contacted hospice care, and the one we used was Eden Hospice in Carson City. I'm sure Chaplin Orr is familiar with them as well. And
Good friends with the Chaplin there.
and we were able to bring her home to Virginia City, where the care that she received was just absolutely amazing. As I said in my comments, we were calling her care worker Saint Brittany because because of the love and compassion that she gave to our mother. And even and something that we didn't realize after mom passed, hospice takes over completely about having someone come to remove her body and take her to funeral services and
That's a good point.
getting us through the morass of paperwork that has to be done, especially because we are transferring my mother to Seattle to be married with my dad. And so that just causes a whole bunch of other mess. And so so we're in the middle of the tragedy and the sadness right now. And I cannot express enough the importance of families going through this themselves in contacting hospice as soon as possible to have them relieve you of this terrible responsibility during such emotional time in your family. And thank you, and God bless you for the work that you do.
Thank you. That is, boy, you covered all the bases there. That is amazing. And it's almost like the best advertisement we could have.
And one question I ask of you, I would love to have a copy of the words that you just expressed about grief being the last part of love. And we are going to have readings at her gravesite, and I would love to be able to read that.
Well, I'll tell you what, I have a packet of information that I give to all, when the people come to our bereavement group or people in the community, I have a stack of bereavement packets that have materials for help and support. And this is one of the poems that is in that bereavement packet. And if you want to swing by the Kindred office, which happens to be right next to the Eden.
Oh my goodness, okay.
Our office is right next to it, and if you want to swing by and just come, right now you have to knock on the door, and we'll come
Yeah.
and just say, I'm here to pick up a bereavement packet, and we'll provide that for you, and that poem will be in that. And if you want, we can give you my email address, and I can even email it to you if you need that.
That would actually be much better. Thank you. I'll call the office and ask for that. And unless you'd like to give it over the line now, I can write it down.
It's pretty easy. It's Robert, ROBERT, ORR at Kindred, KINDRED, Hospice, HOSPICE, care, CARE.com. Robert.orr at kindredhospicecare.com. And if you email me and request that poem, that quote, I will email that over to you.
Okay, that'd be perfect, because we're leaving Sunday to go up to Seattle for the funeral, so that'll be perfect.
That would be wonderful. I would love to do that.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Pat.
Thank
Really
you, Pat, for
appreciate it.
sharing. We appreciate it. Thanks, Chaplin.
I'm sorry to hear about your mom, but thank you so
Thank
much for sharing your story.
Thanks, Jeanette.
Amen. Absolutely.
So we have another question. I'm just going to unmute Claudia. So we can hear you now, Claudia, if you'd like to speak.
She still says it's muted.
Okay, can you hear me?
Go ahead, Claudia, we can hear you.
Okay, I was just wondering if that poem could be put on your website so that we could all make a copy of it if we would wish to.
I think that's a great suggestion, Claudia. So if that's okay with you, Chaplin, or I'll have you email it to me.
I
and
can
we'll
do
send
that.
it out tomorrow. The email that goes out with this recording will include the link where you can download or access that poem. If
Okay, that would be great. Thank you very much.
no,
I can email it. I can email it to you when we're done with the podcast or the broadcaster. I can email that right over to you right after we're done.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks, Claudia.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I'm just looking at. So a question here from Doug. Who decides to move a patient to hospice care?
Well, number one, the patient has to be given a terminal diagnosis by a doctor, either their family doctor or at the hospital where they are being treated. And if they're given a terminal diagnosis, the hospice or the doctor will tell them and recommend hospice to them. The doctor can't necessarily recommend which hospice, but the doctor can say, here is a list of the hospices in this area. And then they can start, the family or the patient can start researching which hospices are available in that area. And there's 3 or 4 in the Carson area. And obviously Kindred Hospice is one, and then Eden, is another. And I think there's also St. Mary's, and Renown, I think, also has another hospice organization as well. And then up at the lake, Barton Hospital has Barton Hospice. I was a hospice chaplain for Barton Hospital and a hospital chaplain at Barton Hospital for many years before I came down here to Carson. And my wife is also a nurse up at Barton Hospital at Lake Tahoe. So, but yeah, basically they have to agree to the terms of hospice and agree to the team members. We have what's called admissions nurses that meet with the patient and the family. And the admissions nurse goes through the whole process with them and then brings them on to hospice. And so that's kind of how the process works.
Thank you. We have Kimberly Spalding from Kindred Hospice also on the call. And
Hi, Kimberly.
Hi.
did you have something you wanted to add, Kim?
Yeah, I just really want to empower anyone like Pat. Pat had called hospice herself because she knew that she wanted to get her mom home. And the beautiful thing about hospice is that a doctor does not have to bring up hospice first. We actually get a large part of our referrals from friends and family who are concerned about their loved one. They want their loved one home and cared for at home. And so they initiate the hospice process. And so what that would look like is like Pat, it sounds like she called Eden to get things started. We get calls all the time from people who are concerned about their loved ones, who say, I think my mom might need hospice. And then we take it from there. And we will call the physician, the patient's physician. The patient doesn't have to be in a hospital setting. We can call and say, we just got a notification from Mrs. Smith. She's not doing well. My nurse went out and saw her, and it does look like it's time for hospice. And I would say 99% of the time, physicians are more than happy to send their patients to hospice because they understand the kind of care that they're going to get there. So I would just want to empower anyone who's thinking about hospice for their loved one. Don't wait for the doctor to bring it up. If you think it's time, we can always have a nurse come out to the home to look at the patient and see if it's time.
Thank you, Kim. Actually,
Thank
Kim,
you.
we've talked about this before. Can you just touch on sometimes why maybe the doctor doesn't bring up hospice?
Sure. Physicians, when they're going to medical school, they're trained on curing people, hope. And sometimes they don't always think about the other treatment option, which would be comfort care and no aggressive treatments at home. And so I would say, physicians for the most part aren't really great at bringing up hospice care because they want to do everything possible, even if they know there's not a lot that can be done. And so, you know, we have some oncologists that are great about it, and we have some oncologists that aren't great about it. So, you know, really, if a physician's not trained in palliative medicine, or they're not really around it much, they may not bring it up. So like I said, again, don't hesitate to bring it up yourself.
Thanks, Kim.
That's great. That's why I'm not an admissions nurse.
Well, we're coming up on the hour. We have a few minutes left if anyone has any questions. So feel free to put up your hand or type in your question. And while giving people an opportunity to do that, is there anything else, Chaplin, or you would like to add that we didn't cover?
I just want to reiterate what Kimberly said, is how important it is to whatever situation to research more. If you have questions more about hospice, call hospice and ask if you have other questions or concerns or thoughts, even if it's just information for down the road. Maybe you're not there right now, but maybe down the road, to be prepared and to have that information readily available now, to be, you know, like a good Boy Scout, you know, be prepared.
We're big proponents on that, planning ahead. It makes it much smoother moving forward and can really be a gift to the whole family to plan ahead.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much on behalf of Annette and myself and the Retired Living Truth series and our sponsors. Thank you so much, Chaplain Orr, for giving your time today, and Kimberly. And we'll get this recording out to everybody tomorrow. Around this time, you'll get an email with a link to the recording, the poem, and anything else that we can include. And we look forward to seeing everybody on our next webinar. Our next one is Flipping the Money Switch on Thursday, June. I think it's the 16th or the 18th. Looking at the calendar. It must be June 18th. And that will be a webinar again. We hope in July to be back at our venue, but we'll also be doing it via webinar also. So thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of the day. And
thank you. Thank you for your help and support and get the information out there. Appreciate it.
Our absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.